The annual Backpack Give Back takes place Saturday, August 12th from 10 to noon at Morton College. Students and their families from districts served by West 40 can pick up a free backpack stocked with essential school supplies. Come join the fun and see available community resources. That's the Backpack Give Back, August 12th at Morton College. We'll see you there. Hi everybody, this is Chris Coffey from West 40, and you're listening to Shift Everything, the podcast that challenges the status quo in education. Join us as we explore what's happening in the classroom and the changes that are making the impossible possible. Welcome back to Shift Everything. Today we're exploring the world of school social media. It's one of the most widely used ways that teachers and administrators communicate with students, families, and the broader community. Our guest today makes a living helping educators and administrators make the best use of social media, and she's here to offer tips to help you elevate your social media game to increase your connections and, let's face it, boost your social media likes and comments. Andrea Gribble is an author and the owner of Social School for EDU. And these days, she coaches schools across the country on how to celebrate their students safely on social media. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm excited to be here.
And thank you very much for agreeing to share some of your expertise with us. So we're talking school social media. This is very important these days. I'm sure you've seen it grow in importance over the past couple of years, especially during the pandemic when so many parents were wanting to find out what's going on in their kids' classrooms, what they should be doing, remote school, all of that stuff. So how have you seen school social media grow in recent years?
Well, the recent Pew research, I guess, in regards to how much time internet users spend on social media a day is 151 minutes. That's like 2.5 hours, right? So people are spending a lot of time on social media. And as much as you want to think that, people maybe are frustrated and going away from it, it's a reality. And if our schools aren't using social media to celebrate and promote and really engage with their community, with their parents, with their staff, with potential staff. I mean, there's staff shortages everywhere, right? Then we're really missing a huge opportunity. And I really do believe that the world needs our positive stories now more than ever with the negativity that is out there. And so social media can be a great tool in order to get those great stories out there. And it's a free tool, right? Like it doesn't cost anything. And so I think, all schools are budget savvy. And so it can be a great tool if you can leverage it in the right way.
Well, before we ask you to share some of your tips that could benefit our educators, not just here in the greater Chicago area, but across the country, across the world, how did you get so involved and proficient in social media for schools?
Yeah, well, Chris, my story goes back to, 2013, really. I was in corporate America, kind of working my way up, and I got laid off. I was a single mom of 2 little girls, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I lived in a small town. I decided to start doing social media for like small business owners. And then the superintendent in my small little school district in New Auburn, Wisconsin, reached out and said, hey, I heard you're doing stuff with social media. Why don't you help the school? Like, I don't know how to deal with like safety and security and what to share. And, so I said, awesome. I would love to do that because I had the 2 daughters going to that school. I wasn't as connected as I needed to be. We don't have a local newspaper. So it's like, hey, I know there are great things happening in that school building each and every day, but we've got to get those stories out there. So I did a little pilot program with them starting back in April of 2014. And I kind of discovered a passion of mine, which was, storytelling and celebrating. And I found a need. Schools all over kind of needed help. And so my company grew out of just that happenstance project, I guess, pilot project with Little New Auburn, who I still celebrate today. But I also lead a team of about 30 stay-at-home moms. We manage social media for over 80 school districts across the country. And then I coach through this membership program that I have in regards to what works best for those schools that have their own social media person, but they're trying to figure it out on their own too. And literally, social media changes every day. Like, we all have this brand new icon on our phone, Chris, right now that my daughter was like, "What's that X on there?" And I'm just like, "Oh, that's Twitter now," right? So it's always changing. We've got to kind of stick together to figure out what we need to do best for our schools.
Very good points, especially with Twitter becoming X. And I know a lot of schools depend on Twitter, but it also seems like a lot of schools use Facebook. Is that correct for me to assume that the biggest tool, social media wise, is Facebook, at least for the people in the school office to send out those blast messages?
Yeah, I would say definitely with all the schools we work with, either direct management or that we coach, Facebook is the number one platform. In Little New Auburn, we're reaching over 5,000 different people a week with the stories that we share. But I would like to comment just a little bit on how you phrased it, Chris, like how we blast out things, and that would be the best place to blast things out. I mean, blasting great stories and videos, that's what I focus on and I really teach. When you're talking about information that needs to get out to parents, you have direct communication. You have your website, you have emails, you have text messaging. Not everything belongs on social media. And we really learned that during COVID, right? Because if you put anything about, learning from home or mask policies, like you might have been crucified. And it was by people that weren't even in your community. They just happened to see your posts out there on Facebook or on Instagram or on Twitter. So you got to be really careful with what tool you use to communicate what type of information. And I really talk about, my mug here says, celebrate your school one story at a time. So it's not just the reminders. And of course, right now it's back to school season. So we are putting out some reminders and those can get shared. But we really want to put things and stories out there, moments that families and community members don't get to see on a day in, day out basis, so that we can kind of correct the story of what's actually happening in our schools. People are making a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of stories about what's happening. We have the power in our little hand with this beautiful camera, which is also an amazing video recording device, this phone that we can use. We can really give some insight and really be transparent with what's happening in our schools.
So are you saying that positive feel-good stories often work better on social media, whereas policy updates, things happening in the school cafeteria as far as menus, that's better suited for a school district website?
Yes, exactly. So the way social media works, Chris, is it's based on engagement. There's this algorithm because there's so much noise out there on all of these social media channels. They have to decide what types of posts are they going to show to what types of people, and it's kind of a personalized thing. You'll see that the more you interact with a certain brand or a certain person, the more they show up in your news feed. Well, that's the same for your school. And so you really want to share content, share stories that people are going to on Facebook like, comment, and share. Okay. If they're not interacting with your post isn't going to be seen by many people. The average reach of a school district post is about 33% of their followers. So if you had 1,000 followers, you would reach about 333 people, and that would be pretty good, Chris. So you can really quickly see that, hey, I'm not reaching all 1,000 people that even said, hey, I want to follow this school. I want to stay interested. They're not even going to see everything that you put out there. Now, when you go against a business like mine, when I put things out there, my average reach is about 2%. Okay. So that is a bit, I mean, if I have 1,000 followers, I'm only reaching 20 people without paying to boost it. And so we're really lucky in schools that we do have an engaged audience, but you have to give them stories and give them content and write in a way that's going to lead people to want to engage, want to comment, want to share, which, is a big reason. There is a lot to it, which is a big reason why I wrote my book called Social Media for Schools, because we didn't really have a manual of, okay, what really works best. Most people in education don't have a formal class on social media, right? And certainly not just for schools. So I really tried to take what I've learned over the past 9.5 years and put that to work in that book, and create a community. And I've got a ton of free resources, by the way. You don't have to buy the book to get some of this great advice through my podcast and through my blog on my website. But there's just simple things that you can do that are really going to help celebrate your students and your staff with more people. And that's really the goal with social media is, hey, we just want to shine a light on the amazing things happening each and every day.
So it's all about the algorithm, you say?
Yes, it is all about the algorithm. There's kind of a little mathematical equation that I teach when I speak to schools all over and school communicators. And, a like or a love on Facebook is really worth about 1 point. So, Facebook says, okay, that's good. When somebody takes the time to comment, so that means they're looking at the post and they care enough about that post to comment, that's worth 7 points. So it's 7 times more powerful when somebody takes the time to comment on something than just hit the like button. Now, if they share the post, which means they're sharing it with their followers who aren't necessarily following your school's page, that could be worth 14 points or more, depending on how many people they're connected to. So if you get, let's say, a local organization or business, or in our case, like when we share something with our SRO officer, our police department, local sheriff's department will share that. Well, they have a ton of followers, right? And 50,000 followers. Those posts almost always reach about 10,000 people. We only have 2,800 followers on our page. So that is how social media works. That's why when you share pictures and maybe ask questions, or, lead them into maybe a little mystery to reading more, or if you share, this is one of my pet peeves, Chris. People like to take a lot of photos and put them into a collage, and then they're all really small. Now we got to remember, most people look at social media on this phone. And even though they've gotten bigger than back in the day when we started getting phones, right? They still are relatively small. And with me needing cheaters now to see close up, it's even harder to look at. So instead of making those collages, just put all the pictures out on Facebook. They allow you to put multiple photos, and people want to see their kid, and they'll likely share a picture of their child. And sometimes you can spend a lot of time on creating videos, and some of those things, and they might not reach as many people as just some photos. So I try to teach, keeping it simple, really telling those authentic stories, sharing those moments, and doing it on a consistent basis so that you can show up in that news feed. Because, Chris, nobody really goes and says, I wonder what's happening in my school district today. I'm going to go to their Facebook page. They don't do that. Okay. I'm a mom of now 6 kids. I am busy. I do not have time to do that. But I'm scrolling through Facebook. And so if something shows up from the school, I'm going to look at it. And so we really need to pay attention to that algorithm and that interaction and engagement we're getting, because that'll ultimately drive the eyeballs on your stories.
Andrea Gribble, author and owner of a company called Social School for EDU, is our guest today on Shift Everything, continuing our conversation about making the most use and the best use of your social media. Does frequency of posts, the number of times you post per day, does that have any difference in expanding reach?
It does. You don't want to post too much, because then sometimes social media, they think you're spamming people and they may cut off some of your reach. Now, this will be differing opinions for many. And when you are talking about a business, you're talking about 1 time a day, especially on Facebook. I mean, they all vary. Instagram, Twitter, you can post more. and obviously, I don't know if I should even call it Twitter anymore, if it's X. You can almost post as much as you want. There are stories that you can use, which live for 24 hours. That exists both on Instagram and on Facebook. And usually the three most popular, just so you know, are Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. People use YouTube as well for videos to kind of house, and some use LinkedIn also to share not only job openings but what's happening. But I like to say, there are great things happening in your school or school district every single day, and I think 2 to 3 times a day is totally fine. I post usually 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. because some of those are peak times when people are looking at social media. I think another great time to post is pickup time. So if your school gets out at 3:30, posting at 3 o'clock is going to catch all those parents or guardians that are in the parking lot or the pickup line. And what are they doing? They're scrolling their phone. So there's some typical times. So I'm typically posting and separating posts by 3, 4, 5 hours. Some mistakes, and at least with Facebook and Instagram, I mean, there's scheduling tools right in Meta Business Suite. If you don't have Meta Business Suite on your phone, I highly recommend it. It's very easy to keep your school page separate from your personal pages on like Instagram and Facebook. But you can schedule. So I'm not up at 5:45 to make sure I make a post at 6 a.m. No, I can schedule in advance, and I can have some of those things already set to be able to hopefully reach the most amount of people. Now, it's not to say that you might have a big event at your school like homecoming. And gosh, there's a lot of stuff going on, and so we want to put that out there as soon as we can. That's fine. But typically you want to curate a story. You don't want to post 10 times on the first day of school and then not post for 2 weeks, because then you are not building up that algorithm. You're not building up consistency. You're not showing yourself as a great, storyteller. And so you're not going to get as many eyeballs on your content. But I would say it is quality over quantity. So you don't want to just be posting just to post. We used to post Motivational Monday. So it's like positive quotes, which you think, hey, that'd be great. But what we found was it wasn't driving a ton of engagement. Even though they were positive sayings and maybe somebody could share it, they weren't. So we went away from that. We do more staff features, student features, throwback Thursdays. These are old pictures of yearbooks. And your alumni gets involved. Your community members love to see the big hairstyles, the clothes that they were wearing, the technology, the big game that they won back in 1972 and the football team went to state. People love that nostalgic content. So those are some great things that you could schedule out ahead of time and then fill in at other time slots with the everyday happenings that are happening at your school.
When I saw you a couple of weeks ago at a conference in St. Louis, you had a very, very cool session in which school districts across the country shared some of their success stories. And it was what type of posts were very successful for them. And we kind of compared, would you think that this post would be better than this post? And they explained why certain posts did good. So you just shared some examples that some of the social media departments and the communications departments offered. Very interesting. Just a couple more questions, Andrea.
Yeah.
What if your school district does not have a communications department that could dedicate more time to social media? Who in the administration office and the principal's office should take up this challenge?
Well, most schools don't have a communications office. I mean, some of the bigger ones do, but I would say out of all the schools, probably 70% don't have a dedicated communications team, or person. Like a lot of times it's one person. I think you need to find somebody that is passionate about social media. The ways that I teach social media, it really is meant to be a part of your day. It's not meant to be your whole job. So we have administrative assistants, we have media specialists, we have assistant principals or principals, we have a teacher. Some schools even get like a parent volunteer that wants to do it. It's all about setting up a system to get content from throughout the school, because one person cannot go out and take pictures at every single event in every single classroom. And by the way, there's awesome things happening, a student tying another student's shoe and just catching that. Those are the moments that we want to capture and celebrate. All of our staff has a camera because they all have cell phones. So enabling them to be able to snap those pictures and get them to somebody on your team. We usually suggest creating a separate email, like socialmedia@myschool.org. And then that person once a day checks that email, and then they schedule those stories out on social media. Then they can also monitor the comments and things like that. They need a little bit of time in their schedule to do that. And social media is certainly something that is around the clock, but you can maintain and manage it in a part-time fashion. My byline for my book called Social Media for Schools is proven storytelling strategies and ideas to celebrate your students and staff while keeping your sanity. So I know social media, and it can feel like you're always on. And I certainly was in that boat when I started, but there are methods so that you can build a system that can really help you maintain a good kind of work-life harmony, and still do a great job in celebrating your school.
And everything you're saying, Andrea, makes it sound like schools might be missing out if they don't utilize their social media.
Oh, I think they're missing out big time. 70% of most communities, the taxpayers in that community don't have a direct tie back to the school anymore. Meaning maybe they had a student that graduated, but they're not currently going to that school. 70%, that's a lot of people. So they're not tuned into your newsletter necessarily. They're not visiting your website, okay? So if we can use social media to meet them where they're at, because let's face it, even those that are 60, I mean, my mom's on Facebook. I tell you, she'd be a good one to follow any of your schools, because my mom is like commenting on everything. So you've got people in your community that want to cheer your students and your staff on, that know how great your community is. So this gives them a platform to stay connected. So I do think that you're missing out if you are not leveraging it. And I'm going to tell you, Chris, if you can only start in one place, which many people, they try to do it all, and then they're so overwhelmed they can't do any of it well. If you just got to focus in one place, I'd say Facebook. Some might say Instagram. So one of those two places, I think, is the one spot you should spend the most time with, and then really build your following. Make sure people know that you're there. Tell them at events, back to school, promote it. Hey, you're going to check out all the great things happening here. And I think you'll see a big increase in that engagement, hopefully in your in-person events, the support for your school that could come in, so many ways. We've had big donations made to schools just because of some of these connections that are made through social media with people that don't even have a direct tie maybe to your school. So
Andrea Gribble, could you talk a little bit about your podcast, a little bit more about your book, and how educators and administrators can learn more about your company?
Yes. So I'm out of Wisconsin. I didn't even say that yet, Chris. I'm sure everybody could tell. I'm just passionate about helping more people. I talk to great people all the time. I didn't go to school for social media, Chris. I've learned all of this by paying attention to what other people are doing. My weekly podcast is called Mastering Social Media for Schools. And I feature guests from around the country that are sharing what works for them. What are they doing? Latest strategies. How do you handle this crisis? How do you involve students? So you can check that out. That was my COVID project. So I've been doing that weekly show since 2020. My favorite thing that I do. You can grab my book, Social Media for Schools. It's out there on Amazon, anywhere books are sold. And then you can learn more about my services at socialschool4edu.com. That's the number 4. There I just try to share a lot of free tips, tricks, strategies, and I've got a ton of resources, one-pagers, to give you ideas on what works, what doesn't, how to help your staff be better storytellers so that they can get good content to you. There's just a ton of free stuff there And I deliver a biweekly newsletter that's totally free every week that you'd be able to sign up for right on my website. So it was so fun talking to you, Chris. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Andrea, for joining us. School social media is so important in today's day and age for staying connected to communities. Andrea Gribble of Social School for EDU, the founder and CEO and author. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great week.
Thanks for listening to Shift Everything. We want to hear your thoughts and bold ideas and share your educational accomplishments. To join the conversation, email us at shifteverything@west40.org.